My name is Marcus, and I'm 28 years old working 2 jobs just to keep my small apartment in the city. I never expected much from life, and I certainly never expected to be sitting at my grandfather's mahogany dining table staring at numbers on a screen that didn't seem real. The evening had started like so many others. Sunday dinner at Grandpa Harold's estate, where the chandelier sparkled above us and the silverware was heavier than anything I owned. My mother Susan sat across from me, picking at her roasted chicken, and my younger sister Diane scrolled through her phone despite Grandpa's disapproving glances. Harold Montgomery was 82 years old, with silver hair combed neatly back and eyes that still held the sharpness of a man who'd built an empire from nothing. He'd made his fortune in manufacturing back when factories still dotted the landscape of our small Pennsylvania town. Now most of those buildings stood empty, but Grandpa's wealth remained secure in investments and properties scattered across 3 states. I'd always felt a distance between us, not because he was unkind, but because I couldn't relate to his world of board meetings and stock portfolios. I drove a delivery truck by day and stocked shelves at a warehouse 3 nights a week. My hands were calloused and my back ached most mornings. We lived in different universes, so when he looked up from his meal and asked me that question about the trust fund, I actually laughed. It was the kind of laugh you give when someone tells an obvious joke. "Did you get the email about your trust fund, Marcus?" I smiled and shook my head. "No one ever told me I had one, Grandpa." My mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Diane looked up from her phone. Grandpa's expression didn't change. He simply reached for the laptop that sat on the sideboard where he'd been checking something before dinner. He opened it with the deliberate movements of someone who taught himself technology, late in life, but mastered it through sheer determination. Then he turned the screen toward me. The email application was open, showing message after message from First National Bank. Each subject line read, "Montgomery Family Trust Statement." Each one was dated, and I could see them stretching back, month after month, year after year. Grandpa scrolled slowly, giving me time to absorb what I was seeing. 10 years of statements, Marcus, all going to an email address I set up for you when you turned 18. I felt my chest tighten. My mother leaned forward. "That can't be right, Harold." Her voice had an edge to it, a defensiveness I recognized from childhood whenever she felt cornered. Grandpa kept his eyes on me, his weathered hand steady on the laptop. "Good then," he said quietly. "Let's change the contact email, so Marcus gets the statements directly from now on." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. Diane whispered, "Oh my God." I couldn't speak. I watched as Grandpa opened the most recent statement. The balance showed at the top in bold numbers. $247,000. My vision blurred for a second. That was more money than I'd earn in 5 years, maybe more. How I finally managed to ask. Grandpa closed the laptop gently. "I set it up after your grandmother passed." He said, "She always worried about you kids having something to fall back on. The trust was funded with money from her life insurance and some investments I made in your name. It's been growing ever since." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. Grandpa looked at my mother. Susan shifted in her chair. "I told your mother about it," he said. "I asked her to make sure you knew when the time was right." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face had gone pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I thought Diane started, but Mom cut her off with a sharp look. "Harold," my mother said slowly, "you know how busy things have been. Marcus has been doing fine on his own." I felt something crack inside my chest. Doing fine. I'd been doing fine. Fine meant missing meals some weeks to make rent. Fine meant driving a car with 200,000 miles that might die any day. Fine meant telling myself I didn't need a dentist, even though my back tooth had been hurting for 6 months. "You knew," I said to my mother. The words felt thick in my throat. "All this time you knew." She reached across the table, but I pulled my hand back. "Marcus, honey. It's complicated. What's complicated about telling your son he has money set aside for him?" My voice was rising now, and I hated it, but I couldn't stop. "What's complicated about giving me information that could have changed my life? Your grandfather wanted you to learn the value of hard work," she said, her own voice getting defensive now. "He didn't want you to become lazy or entitled." "I never said that," Grandpa interrupted firmly. His tone had steel in it. "I never once said Marcus shouldn't know. I trusted you to tell him, Susan. I trusted you to do right by your son." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand what it's like, Harold. Watching him struggle was teaching him responsibility. Teaching me, I repeated, or punishing me. For what? She stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked. You have no idea what I've sacrificed. Then tell me, Mom. Tell me what you sacrificed that was worth more than letting me know I had a safety net. Worth more than letting me sleep at. Wait, without worrying about being evicted. She grabbed her purse. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You're not mature enough to handle it. You would have just wasted it. Grandpa stood too. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. Susan, that's enough. You made a choice that wasn't yours to make. Now you need to own it. Mom looked between us. Her face was flushed and her hands were shaking. Fine, she said. Fine, Marcus. Take your money. See if it makes you happy. See if it fixes everything you think is wrong with your life. She stormed toward the door. Diane hesitated, then followed, calling back. I didn't know Marcus, I swear. Then it was just Grandpa and me in that big dining room with half-eaten food growing cold on expensive plates. I sank back into my chair. My hands were trembling. Grandpa walked slowly around the table and sat in the chair beside me, the one Mom had vacated. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he put his hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, Marcus, he said. I should have checked in with you myself. I should have made sure you knew. I assumed your mother would do the right thing. I shook my head, still trying to process everything. Why would she hide this? He sighed deeply. Your mother has always had a complicated relationship with money. When she was young, I gave her everything. Maybe too much. She never learned to struggle or appreciate what she had. Then when her marriage to your father fell apart and money got tight, I think it changed something in her. Changed her how she became afraid, Grandpa said. Afraid that if you had access to money, you'd turn out like she did in her youth. Wasteful and directionless. She convinced herself that keeping you in the dark was protecting you. But really, I think she was trying to rewrite her own story through you. That doesn't make it right. I said, no, it doesn't, he agreed. But people do strange things when they're afraid, when they're ashamed of their own choices. We sat in silence. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows through the tall windows. 10 years, I said finally. 10 years of struggling, of being afraid. I could have gone back to school, could have fixed my car or moved to a better neighborhood, could have lived instead of just survived. Yes, Grandpa said softly. You could have, and that's not right, but Marcus. He turned to look at me directly. You also became someone strong, someone who knows the value of $1 and the dignity of hard work. Your mother was wrong to hide this from you, but she didn't ruin you. You're still you, kind and honest and hardworking. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. I don't know if I can forgive her. You don't have to decide that tonight, he said. Right now, let's just make sure you get what's yours. He opened the laptop again, and together we changed the email address on the trust account. We updated my contact information and he showed me how to access the online portal where I could see every transaction and statement. Then he called his lawyer despite it being Sunday evening. The lawyer answered on the second ring, because when Harold Montgomery called, people answered. They spoke briefly, and Grandpa arranged for me to come to the office the next day to sign papers giving me full control of the trust. When he hung up, he looked tired, more tired than I'd ever seen him. Are you okay, Grandpa? He smiled faintly. I'm 82 years old, Marcus. I've lived long enough to see people make all kinds of mistakes, including my own. What mistakes did you make? I gave your mother everything without teaching her the responsibility that comes with it. He said, and then when I tried to do better with you, I trusted the wrong person to carry out my wishes. I should have been more involved, should have talked to you directly. We're both learning, I guess, I said. He chuckled at that. I suppose we are. We cleaned up dinner together, moving through the kitchen in comfortable silence. Grandpa washed and I dried using the same dish towels my grandmother had embroidered decades ago. When we finished, he made coffee and we sat in his study. The room smelled of old books and leather. On the walls hung photographs spanning generations. My grandmother young and beautiful in a frame beside their wedding photo. My mother as a little girl. Me and Diane at various ages. Life is long, Marcus, Grandpa said after a while. Longer than you think when you're 28. You'll have time to decide what to do with this money. Time to decide how you feel about your mother. Don't rush either decision. What would you do? I asked. With the money, he considered this carefully. I'd use some to make your life easier. He said, fix what's broken, Pay off what weighs on you, but I'd also invest in your future. Education if you want it. A business maybe, something that grows. And I'd remember that money is a tool, not a solution. It can't buy happiness or fix relationships. But it can give you choices, and choices are freedom. What about Mom? That's harder. He admitted. She loves you, Marcus. In her own confused way, she thought she was doing right. But love doesn't excuse harm, even harm done with good intentions. You'll need to decide if you can forgive her, and that might take time. I thought about all those nights I'd laid awake worried about bills, all the times I'd said no to friends because I couldn't afford to go out, the tooth that still ached in my jaw, the dreams I'd put away because survival took all my energy. How do you forgive that? I asked. The same way you forgive anything, Grandpa said. You start by understanding that people are complicated. Your mother carried her own pain and fear. That doesn't make what she did right, but it makes her human. Then you decide if you want her in your life going forward, and on what terms. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting someone keep hurting you. It means releasing the anger so it doesn't poison you. I stayed at Grandpa's house that night. He set me up in the guest room where the sheets smelled like lavender, and the mattress was softer than anything I'd slept on in years, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the numbers on that screen. $247,000. It felt abstract, like Monopoly money. Around midnight I got up and went downstairs. Grandpa was still awake in his study reading by lamplight. Can't sleep either. He asked, looking up from his book. I shook my head and sat down. He poured me a glass of whiskey from the decanter on his desk. I'm not much of a drinker, I said. Neither am I anymore, he replied. But sometimes a small glass helps quiet the mind. We sipped in silence. The whiskey burned going down but left a warm feeling in my chest. What was Grandma like? I asked. Really like. I was only 10 when she died and I don't remember, as much as I wish I did. Grandpa's face softened. She was the best person I ever knew, he said. Strong but gentle. She came from nothing like I did. We built everything together, this house, the business, the family. He gestured to a photo on his desk. Her smile was radiant, even in black and white. She believed in preparing for the future. He continued. That's why she insisted on the trust funds for you and Diane. She'd seen too many people struggle in old age, or get knocked down by unexpected hardships. She wanted you to have a cushion, a chance. I wish I could thank her. You can, Grandpa said. Live well, make good choices. That's how you honor her. The next morning I went to the lawyer's office. The building was downtown in one of the old stone structures that had survived urban renewal. Inside, everything was dark wood and brass. The lawyer was a woman named Patricia Chen who'd worked with Grandpa for 30 years. She was efficient and kind, explaining everything in terms I could understand. The trust was mine, no strings attached. I could withdraw it all tomorrow if I wanted, or leave it to grow. The choice was mine. I signed papers until my hand cramped. When it was done, Patricia shook my hand. Your grandfather is a good man, she said. He set this up to help you. Use it wisely. I drove back to my apartment in my rattling car. The building looked shabbier than usual. Peeling paint and broken concrete steps. My neighbor's dog was barking. Someone's music thumped through thin walls. Inside my apartment was small. One bedroom with a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. But it was mine. I'd made it home with secondhand furniture and posters covering the worst stains on the walls. I sat on my old couch and pulled out my phone. The banking app showed the trust account now linked to my profile. The balance was real, very real. I could move tomorrow, buy a car that didn't leak oil. Go to the dentist. The relief was overwhelming. But so was something else. Anger. It came in waves. At my mother for hiding this. At myself for not questioning. At the years I'd lost to unnecessary struggle. I called in sick to work, both jobs. Then I just sat there as the anger crashed over me, and slowly ebbed. 3 days passed before my mother called. I let it go to voicemail the first 2 times. On the third call I answered. Marcus, her voice was small. I need to explain. Okay, I said, I'm listening. There was a long pause. When I was your age, I had everything, she began. Your grandfather gave me money, cars, whatever I wanted, and I wasted it, Marcus. I partied. I made terrible choices. I hurt people, including myself. When I met your father, I thought I'd finally grown up. But then the marriage fell apart, and suddenly I had 2 kids, and no money, because I'd never learned to manage it. Everything Grandpa gave me was gone. Did Grandpa help you? Then I asked, "Of course he did." She said, "He always helped, but I was so ashamed. I'd proven I was exactly what I'd always feared. Irresponsible, foolish, a failure. So when he set up the trust for you, I thought I could do better this time. I could teach you differently than I was taught. I could make you strong and self-sufficient. By lying to me. By watching me struggle when you knew there was help available." I heard her crying softly. I know she whispered, "I know how it sounds. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that you needed to learn what I never did. But really I think I was just afraid. Afraid of what? That you'd waste it like I did," she said. "That you'd turn out like me. Or maybe that you'd succeed where I failed and I'd have to face what that meant." I closed my eyes. "Mom, I'm not you. I know, I'm not going to make your mistakes. And you didn't give me a chance to make my own choices. That was cruel." "You're right," she said. "Marcus, you're completely right. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me?" The question hung between us. I thought about what Grandpa had said. About forgiveness being a release. About people being complicated. "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but I'm willing to try. That's more than I deserve." She whispered, "Maybe," I said, "but it's what I'm offering." We talked for a long time. She told me about her own struggles, the shame she'd carried, the fear that had driven her choices. I told her about the nights I'd gone hungry, the stress that had aged me, the dreams I'd abandoned. It wasn't easy, neither of us held back. But by the end, something had shifted. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding, a crack in the wall. The next Sunday I went back to Grandpa's for dinner. Mom was there, so was Diane. We were all careful with each other, polite, testing the boundaries of this new dynamic. But we ate together, we talked, and when Grandpa raised his glass of water in a toast, he looked at each of us. "To family," he said. "Complicated, messy, imperfect family. May we always choose honesty and love even when it's hard." We clinked glasses. I caught Mom's eye and she smiled tentatively. I nodded back. It was a start. Over the following months I made changes. I paid off my credit cards and student loans. I went to the dentist and got the tooth fixed. I bought a reliable used car. Nothing fancy, but something that started every morning without prayer. I cut back to one job and enrolled in community college classes. Business management. I wasn't sure where it would lead, but I wanted to learn, to grow, to become someone who could do more than just survive. Grandpa and I started having breakfast together every Saturday. He taught me about investing and shared stories from his life, the failures as well as the successes. My relationship with Mom improved slowly. We met for coffee once a week. Sometimes it was hard, old resentments would surface, but we kept showing up, kept trying. One afternoon, about 6 months after that dinner, Grandpa asked me to come to his study. He had something to show me. He pulled out an old photo album I'd never seen before. Pictures of him and Grandma when they were young, struggling to build their first business. Living in a tiny apartment, not unlike mine. We had nothing, he said, pointing to a photo of them standing in front of a small storefront. But we had each other and we had hope. He turned the pages showing me their journey, the gradual success, the setbacks, the perseverance. "This money, Marcus," he said, closing the album. "It's just money. What matters is what you do with your life. The person you become. The love you share. You've already proven you're strong. Now prove you're wise." I felt something settle in my chest. A peace I hadn't known I was seeking. "Thank you, Grandpa, for everything." He patted my hand. "Thank your grandmother," he said. "She's the one who made sure you'd be taken care of." I just followed through on her wishes, though I should have done it better. "You did fine," I said, and I meant it. That evening, I drove home through streets that felt different now, not because the neighborhood had changed, but because the struggle hadn't broken me. The betrayal hadn't destroyed my capacity to love. The money hadn't corrupted me. I was still me, just me with choices now. Me with freedom. Me with a future that stretched out full of possibility. At a red light, I thought about the years of struggle. Part of me would always wonder what might have been different if I'd known earlier. But another part recognized that those hard years had shaped me, given me empathy, taught me resilience, made me someone who understood the value of every dollar and the weight of every choice. The light turned green and I drove on, behind me the past with all its pain and lessons. Ahead of me a future I was finally free to build, and beside me in memory and spirit, a grandmother I barely remembered but who had loved me enough to plan for my security, a grandfather who had tried his best and was still trying. and a mother who was learning just as I was. That love and fear sometimes look the same, but lead to very different places. I pulled into my parking spot. My new used car ran quietly. Inside, my apartment was warm, the refrigerator was full, my bills were paid. I had options now, choices, freedom. But more than that, I had something money couldn't buy. I had learned who I was in the struggle, and I had learned who I wanted to be in the abundance. That knowledge was worth more than any trust fund, though I had to admit, having both was pretty good too. I smiled to myself as I unlocked my door. Tomorrow I'd wake up early, go to class, have breakfast with Grandpa on Saturday, coffee with Mom on Tuesday, keep building the life I wanted, one choice at a time, one day at a time, with gratitude for the past that shaped me, and hope for the future I was creating. The trust fund hadn't saved me, I'd saved myself, but it had given me wings, and now it was time to learn to fly. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about family forgiveness and the unexpected ways love shows up in our lives. Leave a comment below telling us about a time someone surprised you with kindness, or how you navigated a difficult family situation. Your story might inspire someone else. Thank you for listening, and remember that it's never too late to choose understanding over anger and hope over bitterness.